Amazon in many locations claims you can't transfer an Amazon account. This is blatantly false and not true. However, it is quite difficult and there are some ramifications. So I'm going to walk you through some of this. And one of the people that prompted me shooting this video said, hey, what happens if somebody dies? How do we transfer their account? So first, this is in the seller forms directly from a seller rep 2 years ago that says seller accounts are generally not transferable. And if ownership of a business changes, they must establish a new seller account. This, of course, would be very devastating to a business, including stock having to transfer between accounts, which is a whole nightmare, and a litany of other challenges, including setting up PPC from scratch and losing the history of the account, and the list goes on and on. Not even to mention the fact that on a new account, you don't even get your own buy box. So it's just a really bad pain in the butt. Now, I did make this guide on how to transfer an account very seamlessly. It's at myamazonguy.com/transfer, and I have a bunch of transfer tips and safe practices and things you need to be aware of. Now, keep in mind that the most important thing that you do during an account transfer is the bank account. Very much more important than anything else. And you want to do the bank account transfer at the end of after, not the end, but rather post transaction with the bank. So in other words, you have your deposit coming up on a Friday. You wouldn't want to make the transfer of the account on a Thursday or a Wednesday. You'd want to wait until Saturday after the deposit has posted, cleared, confirmed, etc. Then make the transfer on that. Some of the other information that I was able to find on when somebody dies, though, is gather this information: death certificate, a will, power of attorney, sales agreement, partnership dissolution agreement, if any of this matters for a transfer or death, updated business registration documents, incorporation papers, tax information, etc. Now, when you're transferring an account, you don't actually have to ask Amazon for permission. You can just go in and make the changes. The very first thing that I would do when transferring an account is to go to settings and login. And I would take ownership of the email login. And once you get access to this, then you have the admin and system control. And then all of these other changes, they don't have to be done at the same time. But this one is a precursor and maintains control of the account, etc. Now, a key note here: when you transfer an account, you can't use an email address that's been associated with Amazon before. This does include buyer accounts. So if you have like a personal Gmail address that you've used on Amazon as a buyer for 20 years, you wouldn't want to put that email address in as the new email for an admin account of an older seller account. Instead, what I recommend you do, and if you can retain ownership of the email, even better during the transaction. But oftentimes, a seller does not want to give the email address up for whatever reason. Sometimes it's attached to their own buyer account. No, you can't sever those two. I get that question all the time. So if they can't give you the email address, you must come in and change the email here. And I would do something like admin@domain.com, right? So if my business was Age of Sage, admin@ageofsage.com or whatever, to take care of that email address change. And again, don't use something that you've already attached to Amazon, even if it's a buyer account. You also wouldn't want the secondary user of another seller account to be added as the admin here as well. This will cause a Section 3 violation, potential banning or suspension of the account. So this is the most important. Phone number would be next. You do get an OTP code that triggers when you try and change this. So hopefully you have access to that phone. Maybe you've got a two-way video conference when you're doing the transfer of an account. Or if there's the deceased member, you have access to the phone when you go and change this. If you don't, the secondary two-step is a little bit easier to change, but you're really going to want to get control of the primary OTP if at all possible. But the secondary two-step, I use what's called an application that can take care of security called 1Password. And I use that for all of my passwords. So if there was a deceased situation, hopefully they are using some sort of password manager. Maybe they use Google, maybe they use LastPass or FirstPass or 1Password. I would recommend logging into that. trying to get access to the admin login. Hopefully there's a will where the admin password is written down. There probably isn't, but you might be able to get access to that or give the death certificate over to that password management system. Hopefully they have a policy where they will release that to you. But I recommend changing this one to some sort of OTP password system. My favorite is 1Pass. LastPass is okay, but they had a breach. And all password management systems are going to have a breach at some point. So just be prepared to rotate passwords and OTP systems on at least an annual basis, in my opinion. But probably more frequent than that, depending on how sophisticated and how big you are. So this is the login and security information. State taxes, there's pretty much no action item here. All the states, for the most part, are now requiring Amazon to collect sales tax so that you don't have to add in your state here. There are almost no exceptions to this, and any state that doesn't have a sales tax won't be located in the system here. So you don't need to worry about that one. The legal entity is the one that I would worry about next. This is going to be in the settings section here. You just click on legal entity right there. You'll do a tax interview. It's very brief. They just basically ask for your federal ID number, and then you sign at the bottom, and you put in like the classification. So if you are changing it, most people are going to be using a business classification, U.S. resident generally for most people. And then a pretty typical one is an LLC. Sometimes people do S corps, or they file, they are legally an S corp, but they file as an LLC. Very, very common for that to happen. But this will be verified within 24 hours, generally a lot quicker than that. And so they will look up your tax information. So this does need to be accurate, but have your TIN ready to go and then hit continue, and it should go through, and this shouldn't be a problem at all. The next thing that I would worry about is user permissions. And so if you're taking control of the admin, the next thing you need to do is look at like the list of user permissions. So to do that, you can go to the account info section, or you can click on this gear icon and then click on user permissions. A special note here, the icon that doesn't have the delete button, so I'm blocking the left of the email addresses for security, but on the right here, you can see there's no delete buttons. This is how you know this is the admin. This is the one you want to have control of. If you don't get control of this, you don't have control of the account. Very, very important. The other key note is that you can delete any of these off of the user permissions and they won't get a notice or anything like that. But you do need to click manage permissions on every single one of these users on an account. Verify that it makes sense. You wouldn't want somebody having control of your banking if they're just like a PPC guy, for example. So go in there and change that. And then there is an icon up here for global user permissions. And if you don't go in and check that, you're going to regret it. There are additional user permissions over there. It's a little confusing that they have user permissions and global user permissions, but those are totally separate things now. So here's an example of global user permissions. So there's price, discounts, brand benefits, which is separate from brand registry, not to make this even more confusing. Growth and some badge stuff, some inventory controls, order management, performance notifications, pricing. There's pricing in regular user permission as well, but it's a little bit different. There's like a dashboard in the global, certain reports, and some of these settings that you can see on screen here. So that's global user permissions, which is separate from user permissions. Authorized partners would be the next thing I would look at. So there are certain things in here like a PPC partner. Maybe you have a third party that's got an application. You want to check these out, make sure none of them are alarming or don't make sense, or there's not like a inventory sync to an old system that's out of date that will really throw you off. Here's what the user permissions that's not global, but just the user permissions looks like. And here you can see there's advertising control, including A+ content, a little bit of inventory management, and as well as being able to change the counts on the quantities, order management, some performance notifications, and a bunch of reports. And then general settings included in here. You'll also find banking, access, and tax info, which generally has to be done from the admin and can't be done from other sub-user logins. The next thing that I would do after getting full control and access is to look at the inventory. And so there's inside of the new inventory page, this is a relatively new layout. So you can click on an icon like this. You can do multiple at the same time, and then check out the 3-dot drop down on the far right. And what we want to do is go to set replenishment alerts. Now, what's really cool about this is that you can change when it emails you when inventory is in and out. So I generally recommend when the weeks of coverage is under 6 weeks. Now, obviously during holidays and stuff like that, that's not going to work for you. So just be diligent to plan ahead. But having a 6 week threshold will tell us like when we need to send in the next shipment. It will send you an email. It'll have a little red bell inside of the inventory page. It's honestly the most underutilized, awesome inventory tool inside of Seller Central. And I just really endorse and highly recommend, because the number one rule about Amazon is never go out of stock. And the second rule is kind of like the first. It's no, seriously, never go out of stock. If you go out of stock, transferring the account will become pointless because you won't have had any value to the account if you're running out of stock. So just a really important point I want to make. So those are generally the things that I find during a transferred account. Worst case scenario, you might get a security lock where they reset things backwards. So don't piss off the guy you transferred the account from, because you may need to call them up one day randomly and have them change info back over. You're never divorced from the original owner in that sense. I've also heard horror stories. So if you sell your account to something like Empire Flippers or another third-party broker, and then you want to open up another Amazon account someday, please keep in mind that the health of your old account can come back to bite you on your other accounts. So if you sell it to some shady guy for $10,000, whatever, because an account can be worth that, even if there's no sales, they could mess you up and cause a chain reaction of suspensions. So generally speaking, when I sell an account, I'm going to be out of the business and I wouldn't want to go back in and open up another account. And so just be very careful with that association. And it's impossible to prevent that association because there's a history, there's an attachment, your name, your legal info, your driver's license, your banking info, your credit card, like all of this stuff is all connected. So even if you try and do something sophisticated like IP addresses and VPNs, I guarantee you they have connected the accounts. And you actually look shadier when you do some of those techniques. Those used to work 5 years ago. They don't work today in late 2024. So hopefully you found this helpful if you're trying to transfer an account. I do take a lot of coaching calls on transfers. I do have a lot of great info over at myamazonguy.com/transfer. But if you are in a situation where you feel like this didn't help you enough, or you need some additional hand holding or guidance, or you need me to just make sure somebody understands, how to go and do this, go to myamazonguy.com/coaching. You can hire us, same day appointments available. You can send me an email for $50 as well. And I do have a hidden coaching link, which I will put at the top of this description, which is not publicly available. Specifically giving this out on this video because transfers are so sophisticated. It's generally worth paying the $500 to have me for 30 minutes to come in and guide you through that delicate transfer. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys.